No maid lasted with the billionaire's new wife, until a new maid did the impossible. Listen, there are some houses that look perfect from the outside. Gates so shiny they catch the sun. Gardens so green they don't look real. Cars lined up like soldiers, polished and proud. But inside is a different story. In Lekki Phase 1, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Lagos, there stood a mansion that everyone knew about. People slowed down when they drove past it. They stared. They whispered. Not because of how beautiful it was, though it was beautiful. No, they whispered because of what happened inside those walls. They whispered about the woman who lived there. Her name was Mrs. Victoria Adebayo, 33 years old. Tall, fair-skinned, always dressed like she was going to a fashion show, even if she was just walking to the garden. Her perfume lingered in every room long after she left. Her words? They stayed even longer. Victoria was the second wife of Chief Samuel Adebayo, a man so rich he owned 2 oil companies and more houses than most people owned pairs of shoes. People respected Chief Adebayo. They feared his wife, because Mrs. Victoria Adebayo had a reputation. She was the woman no maid could survive working for. 9 maids. 6 months. Every single one of them ran. Some left crying in the middle of the night. Some didn't even wait for morning. They just grabbed their bags and disappeared. One woman was so desperate to escape that she climbed over the back fence. Barefoot. In the dark. That's how bad it was. Victoria didn't just give orders. She commanded. She didn't just correct mistakes. She destroyed you with her words. And if words weren't enough, she would slap you. Hard. Without warning. Without mercy. The staff who remained, the cook, the gardener, the gateman, they all moved like shadows. Quiet. Careful. Always looking over their shoulders. The house was beautiful, yes. But it was also a battlefield. And then one Monday morning, Grace arrived. She came through that big iron gate carrying nothing but a worn nylon bag and something else. Something you couldn't see. Something heavy. Desperation. Grace was in her early 30s, dark-skinned, quiet. She didn't smile when she introduced herself. She didn't ask questions. She just nodded when the housekeeper pointed to a mop and said, "Start with the marble floors. Madam is coming downstairs." The other staff barely looked at her. They were tired. Tired of learning new names every 2 weeks. Tired of watching people come and go like the seasons. But Grace? She wasn't there to make friends. She wasn't there to be comfortable. She was there for one reason. Her daughter, Blessing, 10 years old, lying in a hospital bed in Yaba, fighting a heart condition that was slowly killing her. The doctors said she needed surgery. Urgent surgery. The kind that cost more money than Grace had ever seen in her life. So Grace did what mothers do. She swallowed her pride. She walked into that mansion. And she told herself one thing. Just endure it. Even if they insult you. Even if they slap you. Just endure it. 3 months. That's all. For Blessing. She tied her headscarf tight. Picked up that mop. And started cleaning. She was still wiping the sitting room floor when she heard it. Click. Clack. Click. Clack. Heels. Sharp ones. Coming down the stairs. Grace looked up. And there she was. Mrs. Victoria Adebayo, standing at the top of the staircase in a wine-colored silk robe, holding a teacup like she owned the entire world. She looked Grace up and down. Slowly. Like she was inspecting something she might throw away. Then, without saying a single word, Victoria walked over to the water bucket beside Grace. And kicked it over. Water splashed everywhere. All over the clean tiles Grace had just mopped. All over her slippers. All over her wrapper. Grace gasped and stepped back. Victoria came closer. Her eyes were cold. Empty. "This is the 3rd time this week someone blocks my walkway," she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "I'm not in the mood. Clean it. Now." Grace didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just bent down, picked up the mop, and started cleaning again. Her slippers were soaked. Her hands were shaking. But she kept going. From the hallway, the housekeeper whispered to the cook, "She won't last. She looks too soft." But what nobody knew was this. Grace wasn't soft. She was silent fire. The next morning, Grace woke up before 5 a.m. She swept the compound. She cleaned the glass doors until they sparkled. She mopped the sitting room again, this time with less water, no mistakes. By 6:30, she was in the kitchen washing dishes beside Mama Blessing, the cook. "You woke up early," Mama Blessing said, surprised. Grace smiled gently. I'm just trying to do my work. Mama Blessing shook her head. Sister, it's not about waking early. It's about surviving Madam's mouth. And right on cue, they heard it. Footsteps. Soft. Controlled. Angry. Victoria entered the kitchen in her silk robe, phone in hand. Where's my lemon water? She snapped. Mama Blessing rushed forward. I was just about to. I wasn't asking you. Victoria turned her sharp gaze to Grace. Grace wiped her hands quickly and bowed her head. I'll get it now, Ma. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Room temperature. Not cold. Not warm. Just right. Do you understand? Yes, Ma. Because if I take one sip and my throat feels like it entered a sauna, you will regret your life. Grace nodded. Yes, Ma. She poured the water carefully. Added 2 slices of lemon. Walked slowly up the marble stairs to Victoria's bedroom. Knocked softly. Ma, your water. Come in. The room was spotless. Gold curtains. Perfume bottles lined up perfectly on the dresser. A small white dog sitting on the bed like royalty. Grace placed the tray gently on the side table. Victoria didn't say thank you. She never did. She just picked up the glass. Took a sip. Paused. Grace's heart was pounding. Then Victoria smirked. You're lucky. You got it right. Grace turned to leave. But Victoria wasn't done. There's a stain on the bathroom sink, she said. I hate stains. I'll clean it now, Ma. Grace entered the bathroom and found the faint rust stain on the sink. She reached for the cleaning spray and started scrubbing. Gently. Carefully. Then thud. Her shoulder brushed a perfume bottle. It wobbled. Grace caught it just in time. Her breath stopped. She placed it back carefully on the counter, hands trembling. But when she turned around, Victoria was standing right there in the doorway. Arms folded. Eyes burning. Without a word, Victoria walked forward. And slapped Grace. Hard. Across the face. Grace's head turned with the force. Her cheeks stung. Her eyes burned. But she didn't cry. You're clumsy, Victoria said coldly. I don't like clumsy people. Grace bowed her head. I'm sorry, Ma. She gently picked up the perfume bottle again and placed it back in perfect line with the others. Her hands were shaking. But her spirit? Her spirit was steady. You'll clean the guest room next, Victoria said, already walking back to her bed. And iron the bed sheets while they're on the bed. I don't like wrinkles. Yes, Ma. Grace left the room quietly. In the hallway, Chief Samuel Adebayo was standing there. Gray beard. Calm face. Neatly dressed. He had heard everything. Their eyes met. He didn't speak. But Grace could see it. That small flicker in his eyes. Pity. But Grace didn't need pity. She needed that salary. She walked past him without a word and went straight to the guest room. Because in Grace's heart, one thing was crystal clear. She would not leave. Not until her daughter could live. The battle has just begun. Grace has been tested. She has been slapped. She has been humiliated. But she hasn't run. And that is starting to scare Mrs. Victoria Adebayo. Because for the first time in her life, she's facing someone she can't break. What happens next will change both of their lives forever. 3 days passed. And in those 3 days, something strange began to happen in that mansion. Grace didn't cry. She didn't pack her bag. She didn't run away in the middle of the night like all the others. She just stayed. And that was driving Mrs. Victoria Adebayo absolutely crazy. You see, Victoria was used to breaking people. She was used to watching them crumble under the weight of her words, her slaps, her impossible demands. She had perfected the art of making people feel small. But Grace wouldn't break. So Victoria turned up the heat. First, Grace's uniform disappeared. All of them. Gone. The only thing left in her cupboard was a see-through lace nightgown that obviously wasn't hers. Grace didn't complain. She just came out wearing her own faded t-shirt and wrapper. The housekeeper gasped. You're going out like that? Grace simply said, It's clean. It's decent. It's enough. When Victoria saw her, she smiled. That slow, mocking smile. Did you sleep in the gutter? She asked loudly. Or are you just dressing to match the mop? Some of the staff laughed nervously. Grace didn't respond. She just bowed, picked up her mop, and kept working. Then came the accidents. Victoria spilled red wine on the white sitting room carpet. On purpose. Then stood there watching Grace clean it without saying a word. She knocked over a crystal bowl and blamed Grace for breaking it. She poured water on freshly mopped floors just to watch Grace mop them again. But no matter what Victoria did, Grace remained calm. Steady. Present. Even Chief Adebayo started noticing. One evening, he was sitting in the garden reading his newspaper when he saw Grace sweeping near the flowers. Her wrapper was torn at the edge. Her face looked tired. But her hands? Her hands were steady. "Grace, right?" he asked gently. "Yes, sir," she said, stopping to greet him properly. "Are they treating you well here?" Grace paused. Then she smiled. A sad, knowing smile. "They're treating me like life treats many of us, sir," she said quietly. "But I'll be okay." Chief Adebayo blinked. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he folded his newspaper and walked back inside without another word. But that night he looked at his wife and asked, "Why is that girl still here? With the way you've treated her, most people would have quit by now." Victoria took a slow sip of her wine and smiled slightly. "She's still useful. That's why she's here." But even as she said it, Victoria could feel something shifting. The energy in the house had changed, and it was starting to scare her. Then came the Saturday morning that changed everything. The sky was heavy with clouds. A soft drizzle tapped gently on the windows. The house was unusually quiet. Grace had just finished sweeping the hallway when she passed by the large mirror near the staircase. And she stopped, because there, sitting on the marble floor, was Mrs. Victoria Adebayo, barefoot, her silk scarf half falling off her head, makeup smeared, mascara running down her cheeks like someone had wiped tears too fast. Grace froze. She had never seen this woman look human. Victoria was staring at herself in the mirror, almost like she didn't recognize the woman looking back. Her red wine glass from last night still sat on the floor beside her. Her phone was locked, her heels thrown to one side. Grace wanted to turn back. This wasn't her business. But something deeper than duty held her feet in place. She stepped forward slowly. "Ma!" Victoria turned sharply. Her face, usually so fierce and controlled, looked cracked. Broken. "What do you want?" she asked, trying to sound sharp. But her voice shook. Grace bowed her head. "Sorry, Ma. I didn't mean to disturb." She placed a small, clean towel beside Victoria on the floor. Then she turned to leave. "Wait." Grace stopped. Victoria stared at her. Eyes red. Voice trembling. "Why do you stay?" she asked. Grace was quiet for a moment. Then she said gently, "Because I need to. For my daughter. You could get another job." Grace smiled faintly. "Maybe. But they won't pay like this one. And my daughter's hospital doesn't accept stories." Victoria looked at her. Really looked at her. Studied her face. "You're not scared of me?" Grace hesitated. Then she said the truth. "I used to be scared of life, Ma. But when you face death in a hospital ward, holding your child's hand, nothing else can really break you again." Victoria looked away. For a long while, she said nothing. Then quietly, she whispered something Grace never expected to hear. "They said I wasn't good enough." Grace's brow furrowed. "Who, Ma?" "My husband's friends. His family. Even people in church." Her voice cracked. "They said I was too young. Too flashy. That I was just a trophy wife. No substance." She paused. "I thought if I could control everything, if the house was spotless, if the staff were perfect, if I never let anyone get too close, maybe I'd feel in control of something." Grace said nothing. She simply sat down beside Victoria on that cold marble floor. Not too close. Not too far. Not to advise. Not to argue. Just to be there. And for the first time in years, Mrs. Victoria Adebayo didn't tell someone to leave. She just sat there. And cried. The next day was Sunday. The house was different. Softer somehow. For the first time since Grace arrived, no one shouted her name. There were no slammed doors. No sarcasm from the staircase. Grace swept the front porch, humming quietly to herself. A soft church chorus her mother used to sing. She didn't even notice Victoria standing behind her, watching. "Is that a gospel song?" Victoria asked. Her voice was calm. Grace turned, surprised. "Yes, Ma. From long ago." Victoria nodded. Then, without another word, she turned and walked back inside. No insult. No warning. Just presence. The staff noticed immediately. In the kitchen, Mama Blessing whispered to the steward, "Did Madam just pass me without shouting about pepper?" He nodded, eyes wide. She even said good morning. That evening, Victoria did something that shocked everyone. She called Grace into the living room. "Dress well tomorrow," she said quietly. Grace frowned. "Ma, you're following me somewhere." "Where, Ma?" "To my women's luncheon." Grace's eyes widened. "Ma, I can't go to that kind of event." "Yes, you can. Victoria said firmly. I want you there. There are some women I need to introduce you to. Doctors. NGO workers. One of them runs a health foundation. She may be able to help with Blessing's treatment. Grace's eyes began to glisten. Ma, I don't even have. I already bought you something, Victoria interrupted gently. It's on your bed. When Grace returned to her room, there it was. A soft peach-colored gown. Simple. Elegant. Folded beside a matching headscarf. Grace touched it slowly. Then she sat on the bed. And wept. Not because she was sad, but because someone finally saw her. The next day, Grace rode in the back of Victoria's SUV. The driver opened the door for her like she belonged. At the luncheon, people stared. Victoria walked into that fancy restaurant with Grace by her side. Not as a maid. Not as a worker. As a woman who mattered. This is Grace, Victoria said to one of the ladies at the table. She's stronger than most women I know. And her daughter is a fighter. The woman smiled warmly. I run a Children's Heart Foundation. Maybe we can help. Send me her details. Grace stood there, frozen in gratitude. 3 days later, her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Good morning. Is this Miss Grace, mother of Blessing? Yes. Yes, this is she. This is Dr. Adeyemi from the Children's Heart Foundation. Mrs. Adebayo referred you to us. We've reviewed your daughter's case, and we'd like to sponsor her surgery. Fully. At no cost. Silence. Grace gripped the kitchen counter. Ma, what did you say? You heard me, the doctor said with a smile in her voice. We're covering everything. Surgery. Medications. Transport. Everything. Grace dropped to her knees. Thank you, Jesus, she whispered. Thank you. The entire kitchen exploded in joy. Mama Blessing rushed in. Even Ibrahim the gateman came running. Grace, you mean it? They shouted. Grace nodded, tears streaming down her face. Madam Victoria, she whispered. She made it happen. That evening, Grace entered Victoria's room with a fresh cup of lemon tea. She placed it gently on the table and turned to leave. Did they call? Victoria asked. Grace turned slowly. Yes, Ma. This afternoon. She couldn't hold back the tears. They're paying for everything. Blessing can have the surgery. She might actually live. Victoria's eyes softened. I told you not to thank me. I have to, Grace said, wiping her tears. Because you didn't have to help. But you did. Victoria looked away for a moment, then said softly, helping you helped me. Grace frowned. I don't understand. I used to think strength was in controlling everything, Victoria said quietly. But I watched you suffer quietly, serve gently, and still smile. She looked Grace in the eye. You reminded me what real strength is. From that day forward, everything changed. The house began to treat Grace differently. The housekeeper deferred to her. Mama Blessing saved the best meat for her plate. Even Ibrahim greeted her with pride. Auntie Grace, good morning. 2 weeks later, Blessing's surgery was a success. And when Grace brought her daughter home, the entire household was waiting. Under the mango tree, they had set up a small celebration. Juice. Snacks. Balloons made from blown gloves. And right in the middle of them all, wearing a soft pink gown and a bright smile, stood Victoria. She walked up to Blessing, knelt beside her, and offered her a small wrapped gift. It's a storybook, she said. I thought maybe we could read it together. Blessing took it shyly. Thank you, Ma. Victoria smiled. Call me Annie Victoria. Grace watched with full eyes. Once upon a time, she had been slapped for spilling water. Now the same hands were gently combing her daughter's hair. Chief Adebayo stepped forward and cleared his throat. Grace, he said, you have reminded us what true strength looks like. He turned to Blessing. You are always welcome here, my dear. This is your second home now. The entire staff clapped. Blessing grinned wide. Grace whispered to Victoria, I don't know how to thank you. Victoria shook her head. You already did. You didn't leave. Weeks passed. The mansion on Lekki Phase 1, once known for silence and shouting, now echoed with laughter. Victoria and Grace would sit together under the mango tree. No titles. No pride. Just woman to woman. One evening, as the sun painted the sky gold, Victoria said something Grace would never forget. You know, the day I slapped you, I was sure you'd leave like the others. I wanted you to. I couldn't stand anyone seeing who I really was underneath all the pride. She paused. Now I thank God you didn't leave. You weren't just a maid in this house. You were the mirror I was too scared to look into. Grace wiped a tear from her cheek. And you gave my daughter a second chance at life, she whispered. I'll never forget that. As the evening breeze swayed the trees and laughter echoed from the kitchen, Grace closed her eyes and breathed in the peace. She had come to this house with nothing but pain, silence, and a worn bag. Now she had respect, honor, hope, and she had become the woman no one could forget. Not because she fought, not because she shouted, but because she stayed. And in staying, she healed everyone around her. My friend, listen to me. Sometimes the strongest people don't make noise. They don't throw fists. They don't raise their voices. They simply stay. And in staying, they change everything. Grace came to that mansion as a maid. She left as a miracle. Not because she had power, but because she had something greater. Patience, presence, and a love so deep that nothing, not insults, not slaps, not cruelty, could move her from her purpose. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments. Where in the world are you watching from? Have you ever had to stay when everything told you to run? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that touch the soul and remind us what it means to be truly human. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and remember, your silence might just be your greatest strength.